Shimal, and we'll get started. So yeah, once again, Deji, so we've covered some important things in the last camp, but I believe there will be videos uploaded for you to view so you can catch up on them. But if you have questions, you can try to ask them, and I will try to answer them without going too far back. Okay, so yeah, this is day 5 of learning Python now. So we're going to continue learning Python 3, the latest version. And yeah. Okay, so yeah, last class we learned about comparison operators. We've already learned about arithmetic operators previously, so we just added another group of operators called comparison operators. We learned about Python conditions and how we use them. And then we learned about Python conditions so we can learn how to get our Python program to make decisions. And to make decisions, we use the if and else statements. And we also learned about chained conditionals and nested statements. So what I'm going to do, I have an IDE open here. We're just gonna test out pretty much where we left off last class. Let's zoom in here so we can see everything a lot better. We also don't need this. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen a little bit better now, and we'll get started. So pretty much I'm going to create a program that pretty much showcases what we learned. So let's start off with input. We've already known input previously. So input, and it will be type here. Set that equal to a variable. We're assigning it to a variable using the equal sign, and we're going to give it a pass. Okay, so that's done. And now we are going to create our if statement. So if pass the variable name, and we have a condition here. So if condition equals true, do this. We can also alter that using other things. So if pass equals two equal signs, since a comparison operator, and then we have our string. So I'll just make it so if pass equals that, so THTT1, and we have to have our colon, and then we say print or do whatever. So print correct, or I need to put a string around that, but anyways, else print incorrect. Let me turn this into a string so we can actually print this, since that's not a variable. And yeah, so let's look at our code. So we have input, so it's gonna tell us to type here. This should be 3 S's, so it's the same as the variable up here. So if pass, the user's input is equal to this, print correct. If it's not, otherwise, do this. So we're going to test this out. We're going to run our work, and we can type here. So I'm going to type something incorrect. I'm going to type random stuff, and it tells us it's incorrect. Just so it looks more clear, I'm actually going to put a colon up here as well. So yeah, we're going to clear this. We're going to run our work again. Now we're going to type in the correct password. So we're going to type in THTT1. And we get, let me make sure I type that correctly. Let me go back one. Oh, let me clear this as well. Okay, it looks like my ID just froze. Let me try something. I'm gonna reset it completely. There we go. So let's actually reset that one more time so we don't get that. And this. And then we're gonna try it again now. Okay, so if pass is equal to THTT1, print correct, else print blah, blah, blah. So let's also bring this up so it's closer together. I'm just gonna copy and paste this in. So copy, and we're gonna run our program. type here. Enter, and then we get correct. Okay, so I think my Python program froze or something. But anyways, yeah, so we created basically a simple password thing. So that's basically wrapping up what we did last class. I also asked you to complete some Solar and stuff, and we're going to be using that this class, but let's head back to the presentation. Okay. So here are the goals for today's class. We have a lot more stuff to do in today's class because I found that wasn't too efficient to be covering one topic every day, especially because you guys are very quick learners and we went through if and else statements very fast. So I find it to be more efficient to cover a lot more stuff or a lot more topics in one day. So we're going to be learning about loops. So to start off with loops, we're going to talk about what a loop actually is. So a loop is something that repeats itself over and over again until a certain condition is met. Now that's pretty much what a loop is. Not too much to say about it. We've probably heard about loops before. You might have played videos on loops that they keep playing over and over again. And that certain condition to end the loop would be to pause the video or exit the video. Okay, so here's going to be why we need loops. So currently with the Python program we just built over here, it looks a little bit different because I have a different string and stuff. But with this Python program here, if the user does not enter in the correct string, the program ends. And with if we've entered it, if we use password prompts in the past, we know that if we enter in with most times we've had to enter in a password on programs and web pages, most of the time we've entered in the wrong password. We get the option to enter it in again. So we get to do it multiple times. But with our program, we only get to try once and it fails. So the only reason we would ever want to have it like this and only let the user get one attempt is if this password is like the password to something very, very, very important and the user can't get it incorrect. So if the user can get it correct, if the user can't get it correct, sure, they get the correct output. But we want to create a loop, so if the user gets it incorrect, they get to try again and then try again and try again. So something else you might have noticed when you're entering passwords on maybe, let's say, an email, so you need to enter in the password for your email. Sometimes they don't let you try too many times. So maybe you only get 5 attempts total, or maybe they let you have infinite amounts of attempts, or maybe they tell you that you have to wait a little bit and then you can try again. So we're going to be learning about how we can do stuff like that in our Python program, otherwise making loops. So there are 2 types of loops in Python called for loops and while loops. So let's talk about for loops first. So for loops can iterate over a sequence of numbers using a function called range. We can use a for loop for when we want to loop something a known amount of times. So going back to that password example, if we want the user to only get 5 attempts in entering their password, we would want to use a for loop so we know how many times we want it to loop. So here's the syntax for creating a for loop in Python. So we have our variable. So we have for starting with the for keyword, and then we have a variable here we're going to be talking about and trying for ourselves. And we have another keyword in, so it's saying in within this range, and then we have something called start, stop, and step. And then down here is a comment. It's just whatever code is going to be loops. So this probably doesn't make sense right now. So we're actually going to try this for ourselves. So the first thing that we should probably try is using the actual range function, because that's where we're going to be using. So let's clear this. I'm going to zoom in a bit more just in case if you couldn't see my screen before. Hopefully we can see it better now. Let me check something. Okay. Let's zoom in and we're actually going to try using the range function. So something to know about the range function is how we actually use it. So the argument we pass within the parentheses. So the argument we pass within the parentheses is our actual range. So here's how we identify our range. So it has a start, a stop, and a step. This is what our range looks like. So our start could be maybe 1, so it starts at 1. It stops at maybe 5, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it won't go up to 5 because it doesn't want to be equivalent to 5. It always wants to be less than 5. And yeah, we can have a step. So how many it skips by? So we can add something like 2. I'm just going to change up the numbers a bit like this. I'll make that maybe just a larger thing like 10, and then now it's skipping by 2, so we'll have less. So by default, if you don't decide to use start, stop, and step, you can just put in one number like 10, and that will make it its stop by default. So any questions so far? We're actually going to try this for ourselves and we can see what it does. So actually don't ask questions yet because you're going to try something. And then if that doesn't help clear up the understanding, then questions will be asked. Okay, so we're going to create a for loop. So for a variable, so we create any variable we want here, and we're going to be talking about it later. So for, let's just say I in now. So for I, the keyword in, so it's going to be within this range. And we put the range. Now we can put in a number. So for now, I'll put in 10. So for I in range 10, print, and we're going to say print I. So let's see what this code does. Okay, so we see that we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 printed. Okay, so pretty much what's happening here is that I represents the variable I is changing every time we complete the loop. So it's representing each one of these values. So we go through the for loop the first time, and it's going through the range of 10. So something else to note is that by default, it will start at 0, start counting from 0. We can actually see we have a total of 10 items. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you might recognize this from when you were using lists in SoloLearn as well. So maybe you had something like this. So we had our list up here. So list, or actually we'll call this cart equals, and we had our items in our list. So blah, 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 blah. I need to make those strings. And then when we wanted to call on an item in the list, this would be considered item 0, item 1, item 2. So the same thing's happening here with the range. So this is 10 total, but it starts counting from 0. So if we don't want to start counting from 0, we want to start counting from 1, we can add a start. So that goes at the first number, and it's 1. So it starts at 1, and it keeps going all the way up to 10, but it won't go equal to 10. It'll always want to be less than 10. So I'll run this now. We'll just remove this since it has no reason to be there anymore. Look at chat as well. So we'll run this now. And now it's starting from 1. So that's our new start, and it goes up to 9 because once again, it does not want to hit the number 10. So that's start, stop, and step. So now let's try creating our first loop. So we're going to do something. We're going to try creating our first loop, and then we're going to break down what's really happening again. So let's do this. Our loop is going to have, let me think. Okay, so let's create, should we move on to the password loop first? So let's create a simple loop for now. Okay, so we actually already created a loop when we did print, but now let's create a loop that happens for passwords. Sure, we'll do the string thing again, but we're going to do it very simple because I want to try something else with that. So we're going to have a input. So we want the input to keep showing up in the loop. So we're actually going to define our input within here. So we're going to put a variable. So I'll make it ANS. I'll set it equal to input, and then input, I'll just say type here again. Okay, so we actually have to create a range as well. I want this to run a total of 5 times total. So now we're going to actually create an if else statement within here, which is something we can do. So next we are going to go like this. So we're going to start creating our if statement. So if, write this down here quickly, I'll use this format that's I can just take, and we do if condition equals to do this. So our condition is going to be if answer, so whatever the user inputs is equaled to, let's say, hello, print correct, else print incorrect. So we can do that again, and now it should hopefully be within our loop. So let's move this down a bit, break some lines. We'll go like this, just keep it more easy to read. Okay, so in our loop now, so our loop's running 5 times. So for blah and range, do this. So it's going to do this 5 times, and we have answers. So it's going to ask the user to type in their input here. After it does that, we're going to get to type, of course, and then now we're going to run a if-else statement. We're going to tell our Python program to make a decision. So we're saying if the user's input is equal to hello, print hi. We're actually going to change that a bit, and then we'll say otherwise, print I don't understand. Got everything here first. Let me actually drink a little bit of water. I think my voice is getting dry. So 1 second, please. Okay. Okay, so we'll continue. So let's try this. I didn't look to see if I might have any errors. Let's just clear this up first, though. We're going to run this. So we get to type here. So I'm going to type in hi. Oh, sorry, I meant to type in hello. So sorry, I don't understand. So actually, yeah, we'll type in the wrong thing constantly first. So we typed that in once, and it said I don't understand. So the loop has run once now. So now we get to type in our input again. So this is the second time. So now I'm going to type in gibberish. It says I don't understand. This is the third time we're going to do it now. So gibberish, fourth time gibberish, fifth time gibberish, and the program ends. So we just ran a loop that runs 5 times. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So now I'm looking out for questions, and that's pretty much what a for loop does. So we use the range function with it, so it can go through each item in the sequence, I guess you said. So any questions so far regarding for loops before we move on to while loops? Let's just keep testing out stuff. So we're going to say, we'll create a new variable. So Lala, sure. It's going to be called on later in our program. So we'll assign it to an integer. Actually, we'll skip that for now. We can do that later. Let's create our for first. So we're going to actually try doing it with lists. This is going to be later in how did you do the loop? I'm not totally on board. Okay, so remember for loops and while loops. So there are 2 types of loops, for loops and then while loops. So first of all, a loop is something that keeps repeating itself. So a for loop, pretty much to put it the simplest way, is something that you want it to loop a certain amount of time. So we say the for loop, we want it to loop only 4 times, done. A while loop is something you're unsure of how long it's going to loop for. So pretty much how long it loops for is depending on what the user does. So it keeps looping under a condition being true or false. So yeah, you don't know how long it's going to loop for, and technically it can loop forever if the condition is always met. A for loop cannot do that, and it stops looping after a certain amount of iterations. An iteration is how many repetitions it's done so far. Okay, so we're going to try for loops one last time. So we're going to do a simple program again. So for I is just the variable we're creating. We can call this anything, of course, just any variable name. And it's going to basically be that, it's going to represent that time in the sequence. So let me see if I can actually explain that better. So and then we have the keyword in, because we're going to put it in within a range. So in range. And we'll say the range is 10. Say print DSD. So DSD is our variable in this case. I've just called it something else. So you'll notice that DSD, when we're printing DSD, it's going to print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because each time we're running this loop, DSD, the variable is upgraded with the next loop is on. So it updates the number is on. So we'll run this and we see, I think I had a loop going. Let me go like this. Oh, sorry, I'm missing a colon here, actually. So we're going to run this. and we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But notice how we printed DSE. We didn't say print 1 to 10. We said print DSD because basically by saying DSD, we're saying print, like basically print the next update in the loop. So tell me when the loop updates. So the first time it went through, it did 0 because it counts starting from 0. So DSD was equal to 0, and it showed that. The next time it ran through was on the second loop, and DSD was now equal to 2 in the range, so it ran 2, and it just kept going and going and going. So any questions so far again regarding that? Did I explain that better about loops and how we create a for loop? So you can actually do for loops with different things. It doesn't need to be a range. It just needs to be an iterable. And an iterable is something that has members that you can call on. So it's basically letting you go like for each in something to do this. So we'll test that out later. I think it's better if we continue on for now and explain while loops. So while loops are actually simpler than for loops, I guess you could say. And yeah, so hopefully that explained for loops a bit. I'm looking out for questions if any come up. You should also try playing around with for loops while we're doing this just to help your understanding. But yeah, so remember start, stop, and step if you're using the range function. Okay, so while loops. So a while loop continues to do something while the condition is true. So unlike a for loop, we don't tell the while loop to only run 4 times and then end. For a while loop, it keeps going while the condition is true. So we can use a while loop when we want to loop something for an unknown amount of time. So we don't know how many times it's going to loop. The amount of times it's going to loop is depending on what the user does. Okay, so here's the syntax for a while loop. It's very similar to an if statement, I guess you could say. So yeah, so we have our while condition. So while this condition is equal to true, do blah, 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 blah. So we're going to test this out for ourselves again. And we also have a keyword we need to talk about as well besides this. Let's go here. We're going to test it. So while, that's the first keyword, while, and we have our condition. So our condition is a condition we create, and we have to use comparison operators. So to actually create a good condition, or actually for now we can create a condition that doesn't use variables, meaning that it's always going to be true. So while 7 is equal to 7, I changed my mind. We actually are going to use variable just to make it more clear. And we're going to create a variable up here called USI. I just need to put something random. So while assigned to the integer 7, while 7 is equal to ucells, and then we tell it what to do. So while this is true, print hello. Okay, so what this is going to do is that it's going to keep running the loop over and over again. And the thing is, we don't have it we're not collecting any input, so it's not, oh, sorry, that's an old question. Okay. So we're just actually going to test this out and I'll explain it afterwards. So, okay, so hello is actually keeps running and I actually can't type anything. So something to know is when you create an infinite loop like this, what you need to do, it's still running, by the way, you can see down here. But what you need to do is that you need to do Control-C to break the loop. So that's a manual way to do it with your keyboard. And we can see we broke the loop. We keyboard interrupt. So we broke the loop. That's how you break an infinite loop. So this is infinite because we don't do anything. So to actually have a use case scenario for this, we're going to do something more like this. So we're going to say, we're going to create another input. So we want users input to do something. We're going to say type here again. So any questions so far? I expect there to be a lot of questions because I'm not sure if I'm explaining this well enough. So yeah, I'm looking out for questions if there are any. So just type them there. So we'll assign this another variable. I'll say we're creating another variable and we're assigning it to an input. So this is going to run, and then let's see what we want to do. So let's see. We're going to say an if statement now. If IMP is equaled to, equaled to a string, of course, going to be 4FD, blah, blah, blah. So I don't believe I actually indented this correctly. So let me fix that here. And now we should be good. Space this out a bit more as well. So if this input is equal to that, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to say print correct. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Print correct. Correct. I don't know why I keep misspelling things. Correct. Okay. And then else print incorrect. Okay, so let's test this out for now and we'll see what this does. So now we collect a user's input, but remember, we still have a while loop going. So see what happens. So we're going to say that. So it's incorrect, incorrect, incorrect. So we actually still have an infinite loop now going now. I can keep typing in stuff and it'll keep saying it's incorrect, so I'm typing in the wrong thing. Even when I type in the correct thing, so 4F it's correct, but it still keeps taking my input. So this is another infinite loop, and we have to break this again with the Control C to interrupt the loop. So what we need to do now to break the loop when it's incorrect is that we can use the keyword. We have two options really. So what we can do is that we can actually make this condition false now. So the way we can do that is just by changing this variable uSauce to something else. So I'll make uSauce equal to 8. So now 7 is no longer equal to uSauce because uSauce is equal to 8 and 7 is not equivalent to 8. So let me look at chat again. Okay, so it looks like we're doing good. And okay, so we're going to test this out now. Okay, so we're going to type here. I'm going to type in the wrong thing first just to see. When we type in the wrong thing, it's still actually infinite because it's not a for loop. We can actually do something to make this not infinite anymore. But yeah, so uSauce equals 8. And now I'm going to type in the correct thing. So I'm going to type in, oops, sorry, I'm typing up here. I'm going to do 4 FD. Correct, and then the loop breaks. So that's the first way we do it. So we end the loop by no longer making this true because this only runs. So we're saying while this is true, run this. But we're saying this is no longer true down here if they type in correct. And then it goes back up here and says, oh, it's not true, so end. So the next way we can do this is actually just by using the keyword. So there's a keyword called break, and this just breaks the loop. So this way might be considered simpler. But yeah, so this just breaks the loop. So we're saying if this is true, print correct, and then break the loop. That's pretty much what it does. So we're going to test this out again. Run our work. And we're going to type stuff. So we can still type stuff. We're still getting correct because we didn't change the else. We only changed the if. So now I'm still going to type in 4FD and it breaks because we use the break keyword. So those are two options of ending your while loop. So hopefully that makes sense so far. Are there any questions regarding that? While loops. So while loops are, I guess, easier to understand than for loops, but for loops are important to understand if you need something that's limited and you don't want it running forever like that. Okay, so let me check the time to see what we're going to try next because we do have a lot still left to learn. So yeah, I guess we'll do that. Actually, yeah, we'll do this now. Okay, so those were just use case examples of it. Now we're actually going to try building a proper program. And yeah, we're going to try building like a proper program that takes in our pin. We get a limited amount of tries. It tells us how many attempts we have remaining. And yeah, so we're going to try that. But before we do that, we have to talk about a couple other concepts first, and then we're good. Okay. So those are for loops and while loops. So those are the easiest way to use them. We have a lot more to learn about for loops actually, so we'll be talking about that soon again. But yeah. Okay, so next we're moving on to talking about assignment operators. So we've discussed arithmetic operators and we've discussed comparison operators. And assignment operators are used to assign values to variables. So we're already familiar with this assignment operator here because we use it to assign values to variables. We use it to assign variables to data types. And yes, we're familiar with this. Okay, so these are kind of, I believe these are what you call compound operators. So these do two things, and it's pretty much just less writing than what you would have to do normally. Okay, so this means add, then assign. So in the first example, this is how we would add one to our variable. I might have to actually turn off this laser pointer because it's interfering with the text. But yeah, so we have a equals to a plus 1. So we've just added 1 to the variable a. But then with example 2, instead of doing that, we can just say a plus equals 1. So both of those examples both have the same results. They both accomplish the same thing, but one of them is just less writing. So we usually want to go with the one that's less writing, and we would use example 2. So this is a compound operator. So it adds and then it assigns. That's why we have the equal signs to show that it assigns. That's why we have the add sign to show that it's doing addition. So the same thing can be said with most of these. We're going to speed through this actually because we don't need to spend too much time on these. But yeah, now it's doing subtract and then assign because we have the subtract symbol. Multiplication, then assign. So multiply, then assign with the asterisk. It's doing the same thing again. So we can, yeah, and we can do exponentiation, then assign. So we can, if we want to raise a variable to the power, we can do that. Divide, then assign. So we can divide something in a variable. Floor divide, then to assign. So yeah, hopefully you get the memo. So we're going to test this out for ourselves again quickly. We'll go here, and then we'll make a variable called a, and it's going to be equal to 12. So here's what we're going to do now. Actually, we're going to test out something else because we can actually talk about a different topic too that you guys practice in Learn. So we're actually going to go something like this. So we're going to create we'll still make a variable called a, but now it's going to be assigned to another input function. So here, and then we'll say hello, or sorry, type here. So we've done that and we're done with that. So now we actually want to create an if and else statement. So we're going to say if a equals, equals there print blah, blah, blah. We're not going to do that yet. And then we also have an else like this. So we're going to say else do this. So this is actually incorrect. I don't want to do that. I want to do something like this. This is going to test what you did in your Learn homework, and this is also going to test something for us. So we're going to go like this actually. So if a equals to 1, 2, 3, the integer 1, 2, 3, print blah. So we'll just say good, and here we'll say bad. So hopefully this code, we understand this code. I'll just go like this. I actually can't tell if that's indented correctly. Probably is. I'll just move this back. Okay, so anyways, so create an input function assigned to a variable so we can call on it later. So we have type here. If the user's input is equal to 1, 2, 3, print good, else print bad. So does anybody have any guesses on what this is going to output? Because I think there are 3 possible guesses you might have. And this has to do with something you did in the Learn course. So any questions about what this is going to, or any ideas on what this is going to output if we run this? If we run this and I enter, or actually no, if we just run this, what will happen? Okay, so sorry if there are no guesses. We're going to actually test this out for ourselves. So let's just clear this so this looks more clean, and we'll press run. So we come to an error. Actually, this isn't even indented first, so let's fix this first, and then we'll try again. So let's go like this. I want to end this and break it just so we can start fresh because I had something not indented properly. So we'll run this and we get to type here. So we're going to type. We're going to type 1 through 3 because we want it to print good. So watch what happens when we press enter. It's going to go to bad. So why is it going to bad when we did type 1, 2, 3? So maybe we didn't indent it right. We'll change that as well. And we'll run this again. Type here, 1, 2, 3. Bad. So we're going to keep getting bad even if we're doing it correct. This is because the input function, the user's input, it takes it as a string. So what we're saying here is that if the user's input is equal to the integer 1, 2, 3, print good, and then if it's not, print bad. So everything else, print bad. So we're printing a string here. So it's taking it as a string, so it's always going to print bad. I can make this one just to be even more simple. And yeah, we'll test this out again. So let me actually I'm curious, I want to try something. Go down here. There we go. So that was, okay, so it was correct. Okay. So does anybody know what function, or since I believe you did this, do you know what function I would have to use to fix this? Okay, well, it's all right. I'll try this for myself. So let's just try this one more time and we get bad. So since it takes it as a string, there are functions we can use, which you probably saw in the solo learn thing, which can basically make the Python program see that as a different data type. So there's the int function, which makes it be seen as an integer. There's the str function, which makes it be seen as a string. And there's also one for float. So we're going to test this out now. And we're going to say read a as a integer. So if the integer a is equal to 1, print good. So now it's going to read the input as a integer, no longer as a string. So by default, it will always, when you enter in something, the Python program is going to take it as a string. And we can test that before we actually try this. We can test that because we can go like this, and then we can go 1, 2, 3. So now the 1, 2, 3 is a string and no longer a, hold on. 1 second, I don't know what I just did. Okay, so now the 1, 2, 3 is no longer an integer and it's a string now. So now when we call on this, we'll be able to recognize that this input we put in is the same as this because they're both strings. So let's test this out. So now we can type 1, 2, 3 again, and we get the output of good because they're both strings. But once again, we remove this, try this again, 1, 2, 3, we get bad because this one's an integer, and then our input's always going to be seen as a string unless if we tell it not to be seen as a string. And then to tell it not to be seen as a string, we have to tell it to be seen as something else, and we can use the int function to tell it what we want. We want it to be seen as an integer. So that's at something else. And then let's try our program now. So I'm going to type 1, 2, 3 again. And then we get the output of good. So that's just testing out what we did, hopefully in the solo learn courses. So wait, you said something about 1, 2, 3 being a string, but I don't see any. Okay. So I did have this here. So I'll test this out again. So 1, 2, 3. This is a string now. We have the double or single quotations. And then here we have our variable. So let me go through this a little bit more clearly because I think I am rushing a bit. Okay, let me gather my thoughts. So here we assigned the variable a to a function called input. The input function takes a user's input. So then down here, we create an if statement. And we create an if else statement so our Python program can make a decision. In this case, it's specifically what it's going to do with the user's input and what it's going to do depending on what the user inputs. So here we say, if the user's input is equal to the string 1, 2, 3, print good, else print bad. So without this, we're still saying if the user's input is equal to 1, 2, 3, print good, else print bad. So we run this, as we've already seen, we print 1, 2, 3, and it prints bad. So this is because the input function itself, outside of everything, the input function, when it collects the user's inputs, it's only going to collect it as a string. So it's going to see the user's input always as a string. So the only way we can change this, or there are two ways we can change this. The first way is to put the int function up by our input function itself. The second way is just to do it specifically for this case. So we're going to say specifically for this case, read a as an integer, and then see if it's equal to this. So we'll do it again now. Type here, we'll type 1, 2, 3, and we get good. So hopefully that answers your question a bit about what's happening here and why we need these functions. Okay, so no problem. So let's see what else we can try before we move on to the next thing, which is going to be methods. Okay, so let's clear up our work a bit. Okay, I guess we'll move on to methods now. So any questions from you, Advait? Any questions from you in chat? Are you understanding? Do I need to go over something again? Okay, anyways, we'll continue on. Okay, nice, Deji. Great that you're following along. Okay, so methods. We're going to be discussing methods now. So Python methods. So methods are built into Python and save us a lot of work and a lot of time. Python has some very useful methods that we can use on strings. So these methods that we can use on strings are called string methods. So here are just some string methods to look at. This is pretty much the syntax for a method. So we have the method name, and then before that we have a dot. So before that dot, we actually have our data type or variable, of course, which is still assigned to a data type. So yeah, there's not much to say. They're pretty useful and they save us a lot of work. So for example, we're going to be using the string method dot upper. Okay, we're just expanding our knowledge on these topics. We might not necessarily be using them, but it's just something nice to know. So let's test it out here. So we're just going to create another input. So we write this code. Okay, we'll say that. Okay, so create an input and it's going to print out whatever the user types out to the screen. So clear this, run, and type something. I'll type in just random stuff and it's going to print it back to me. So watch this now. So I'm going to say a dot upper. Actually, you can get it to complete for me. So a dot upper, and then I put two closing parentheses just to basically say it's a method. So let's see what happens when I run this again. I can type random stuff again, and then notice that the output is all capital. So this saves us a lot of work. If for some reason we want the user's password to be, or sorry, if we want the user's input to be seen as all capitals, we can do that. And we can basically just edit their stuff without them having to type in all capitals. We can make it be seen as all capitals by them. So if something we need is case sensitive, if we get them to enter in a password and it needs to be all capitals, we can do that for them and they don't even have to do that. So they don't even need to see what's going on behind it. So next we're going to try is dot strip. So this is another method. And by the way, these are built into Python. So dot strip. We just change out the name and we still have our data type or variable that's assigned to a data type. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to run this again. We're going to see the output. So actually, maybe we'll run this one time without dot strip, just so we can see, and then we'll run it a second time with dot strip. So first time we're running this, let me see what I did. Is this going to run? Oh yeah, missing a closing here. So it is. Okay, first time we're going to run this, we're going to type in anything. So actually what we're going to do now is I'm going to space this out really far. I'm just going to start typing. And it's going to return to us the same thing. So it's still going to keep all those white spaces at the beginning. So with dot strip, the string method dot strip, you go like that, like that. It's actually going to remove these white spaces at the beginning. So if we need the user to enter in something now and they're not allowed to have spaces, we'll automatically take away the spaces ourselves. So once again, that saves a bit of work. So we're going to type now, and we're going to go like this. And then we see that it returns it without the white spaces. So there are many other string methods or many other methods in general, but these are just talking about methods that could be possibly useful for us. So of course, the opposite of the upper method would just be the lower method. So we need everything to be seen as lowercase. I do dot lower. And then, yes, we can run this again. I type something, I'm just going to do all uppercase. So and then it appears as all lowercase. So we could do something with this instead. So yeah, string methods are very useful and they help save us a lot of work. So any questions about string methods? Okay, so if there aren't any questions, we're going to do our last thing, which is properly building a program now, because we're getting close to the end of the class and I say we should do this if there aren't any questions. So we're going to mess around with for loops and while loops again, because those were the main topics of the class. We're just expanding our knowledge. So next we're going to do this. So 1 second. We're going to create a program that collects a pin. So this is just going to be building an update to our previous program. So this time I actually want to do a pin so we can use the int function. And yeah, so first we're going to print a welcome. And that's done. So we're actually going to be using a for loop here because they have not too many attempts they can use. And yeah, so we're going to create, we want to only have 5 attempts. So we can do something like this. So for la, we'll call it in range, and we'll use the range function to put our range here. So in this case, the range can be 5. So I want to have 5 attempts. Or sorry, I'm missing a colon here. Print correct. So since they have 5 attempts, even if they get correct right now, currently it's still going to run it again. So we want it to break afterwards. So I'll say break. So if they get it correct, the program breaks. Or sorry, I actually missed my whole if statement there. So let me add that. It's going to be tabbed in one more time. Make sure you indent correctly. So if, let's see, if pin, we haven't created this variable yet, but we're going to create that soon. If pin is equal to, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4. La is the name of the variable here. So remember that we create a variable here, and that's basically the variable name we create here is going to be taking up, it's going to be taking the value of each loop's range, I guess you could say. So la is just the variable. So we put any variable name we want here. I just call this la. So let's see. This takes the value for, it updates, this value always updates for each loop we're on. So it tells us which loop we're on if we were to print this out for every loop. Okay. So if pin equals 1, 2, 3, 4, print correct, break, and then now we're actually going to do the code that was meant to be above this, which is our print, because we need another print. So print, enter in your 4-digit pin below. And subtracting below, we can create our first input. So input, or actually, maybe I shouldn't even be talking about these. I should just let it be done. We'll give this a variable of pin. Space everything out a bit more. This can be up here. This one should be separated a bit. Okay, so print welcome and then create a loop, and then you should print enter your 4-digit pin below. Type here. And then, yeah, so if pin equals this, correct, break. And we're actually going to use elif as well, just in case if there's another scenario. This is going to be interesting for what we're going to do later. So elif for deji in range. Yeah, it could be written. This is just any variable. So yeah, it could be written for deji in range 5. And then this variable called deji will keep being updated with whatever loop it's on. So whatever iteration it's on. So we can actually see this because remember, we're using the range and then this is the value in it. So we can see that each one of these is an integer because of course it's a range and it's doing an integer. So we can actually highlight this and we can see that deji is the variable. It has the data type of an integer, which does add up because we're using the range function. Okay. So elif pin, let's say, elif pin equal, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 now, or sorry, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. I want it to print let's just say your pin has been recently changed. Or please try again. Of course, we have our else, so that's just the pin being anything else but this two. So else pin print okay. Elif means else if. It's basically short for else if. So it's saying if this is this. So basically we check if this is true. And then if for some reason this is not true, then we say, okay, I'll have to check if this is true. And then if that's not true, then say, okay, do this instead. So elif is just basically another if. So it's saying if this isn't it, then check if this is it. So it's another, yeah, it's a keyword in Python. Okay, so print your pin has been recently changed. Incorrect. Please try again. That looks good. Let's see if there's anything else I want to do. So we're going to have an attempts remaining. So we're actually going to have a counter. So it's always going to be updated for each time we go through this loop. It's going to be our attempts remaining. So for now, I'm just going to put 2 pluses because I know in between here is going to be our variable. It's going to be our number. And then here's going to be our attempts remaining. So I can go attempts remaining. Okay, so let's look at our code and make sure everything looks good for now because we still have a lot left to do. I'm just going to put this back to law for now. So I remember that because I remember I have it as law, and we're going to run this. So we'll see the output for now. So we enter in our pin. So it's not going to work because what's it called? Because we need to give it the int operator. Sorry, I guess I'm a little bit tired. We need to give it the int operator here, and we need to put it down here as well. So int. So now these are going to be read as int. We can clear this and try running it again. So I'm going to type in 1 now. Probably missing something if that didn't work. Let's see. Okay, so print welcome for lie in range 5. Or actually, I guess we can actually use it right now. So ignore these errors for now. We're actually going to keep adding to our code because we can teach something like this. So for our range, since it's just an integer that goes here, we can actually put a variable in here as long as the variable is equal to an integer. So I'm just going to make lala, that's a new variable. And of course, I have to actually define the variable somewhere. So I'm going to set this equal to 5. So lala is equal to 5, and it's being used here as well. And it's also going to be used for the attempts remaining. So I think that actually saves us a lot of work. So let's look at what we want to do. C amount of bits actually, so I can read this. I say print welcome lala equals 5 for line range lala. Print enter your 4-digit bin below. Type here. We get the option to type. If our input, which is an integer, is equal to 134, print correct. Elif our integer, which is a pin, is equal to 4321. Print your pin has been recently changed. Try it again. That looks good. Let's see, else print incorrect, please try again. So for now, we can actually just get rid of that because we don't have that yet. So let's try. I'm just going to test it out if it's correct to make sure it's correct and the program ends. That's good. We're going to run this again. I'm going to see, put 1, 2, 3, or 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we get your pin has been recently changed. Please try again. And then we get to try again. So let's enter in the wrong thing now. And then tells us it's incorrect. So everything looks good so far. So let me break down. Yeah, I've removed that now. Let me break down what we're looking at currently. So this is just the introduction, basically. So welcome, that's the first line. Doesn't matter to us. It's outside of our loop because I don't want welcome to be printed every single time we run the loop. Also look kind of messy. So I created another variable here. So lala equals 5. And then we have that variable, so we can put it here. And we're also actually going to put it down here. So please try again. Now we're going to actually use the plus. And we're going to say, or actually we have to end this here as well. Now we're going to use the plus. We're going to put in lala here. Something we actually have to do here because we can't just add, since lala is an integer, we can't just add a string to an integer. We have to make this a string now. So we're going to use str, like so. So now we're adding a string to a string. Now I can just space this out a bit so everything's going to be spaced out when it shows. And let's see what we get for now. Let's clear this, run this. Okay, so first thing I want to test is that this program runs 5 times total. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep entering in the incorrect answer. So I'm going to say that. So let's see. Let's run that one more time, just to be safe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the program does run 5 times, and that is what we want. So that is good. Okay, so the next thing we need to do. So the program runs 5 times. It says incorrect, please try again. But if we looked at what it actually said, it always stayed at 5 attempts, which is not what we want. So what we need to do here is that we need to take away 1 from lala each time it's else. I guess we should add a count to it. I think what you're trying, yeah, we want it to count how many attempts are remaining. So what I'm thinking we can do, here's what I'm brainstorming. I'm thinking that every time it gets to else, we can say take away 1 from lala. So here, look at what I'm trying to do. So we're going to have lala, and we're going to say take away 1. So we can just do the minus sign and the equals, and we can say 1 like that. So every time it runs else, it's going to take away one from Lala, and that is going to be updated here, and it's going to print Lala with less than 1. Something else to note, actually, something to note is that once this Lala here, it actually won't affect what's going on up here. It won't affect this variable Lala up here, and that's because once we get this running, this variable cannot change anymore, and it's pretty much irrelevant to it being changed anywhere later in the program. So if it's especially being changed within the actual loop itself, it's just going to ignore it. So this will always stay at 5 up here and won't listen to the changes made within the loop. So we have Lala, a minus equals 1. We're going to test this out again now. Let me clear this. Make sure I did everything correct. We're going to run this. We're good. So we're going to type in 1, incorrect, 4 attempts remaining. So let's see if there are 4 attempts remaining. So 1 attempt, 2 attempt, 3 attempts, 4 attempts. So it looks like our program's working pretty well, and that is great. So it told us we had 0 attempts remaining, and the program ended. So if we want to now, the only thing we have to change to get everything to update is the value of Lola. So I can say I want them to have 10 attempts instead now. So we're going to clear this now, and we're going to try running this again. So we're going to go 1. Incorrect. Please try again. 9 attempts remaining. So that's pretty much like what makes it really fun or cool, I guess you could say, because all you need to do is just change one value of a variable and it affects everything else, and everything else updates to it. So yeah, so instead of having this be assigned 5 and then having multiple things, we can just do everything through 1. So yeah, 9 attempts remaining, and it looks like we'll be able to go 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the program ends. So that is great. Now we can get the user to have multiple attempts, but let's do something else. Or actually, let me check the time before we do something. Okay, we're actually over time. So maybe if we can want later, we can try this. So yeah, I was about to do something else, but we can try that maybe later. So yeah, I guess that's good for now. And we've kind of created more of a proper Python program, and we can get it to do something now. It can tell you how many attempts you have remaining. It can loop, of course, collect users' input. It can respond. And yeah, so that pretty much wraps up the class. You can do the same thing with the while loop, actually. But it looks like we don't have enough time to be doing that. So sorry, I took up a lot of time there. But yeah, so here are the extra activities. So I would like you guys to create a Python program that uses a loop. So it's pretty simple. And yeah, so just uses a loop. It can be a for loop or a while loop of your choosing. You can also complete lesson 19 to 22 on Solar. So that pretty much just covers what we actually discussed. So it covers for loops, while loops, and I believe it's just the quiz at the end to wrap up everything you learned in that module. Okay, so that wraps up the end of the class. Good job. Hopefully everybody understood everything. I'm going to be here for a little bit longer if there are any questions, since we did do a lot. But yeah, so any questions? Should we try doing anything? Otherwise, if you have the extra activities and you're good, you're free to go. We can try more stuff if you would like. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we're good. I'm not sure if I explained these topics too well today. Hopefully I did, but I'm answering questions if there are any. Yeah, you can try maybe building a program like this. Our program's starting to get better and better, and it's just going to keep getting better and better because we can add more. It's all right. The extra activities are just, yeah, it's all right. This isn't school, right? So it's not going to be you're going to get in trouble or anything for not completing the extra activities. The extra activities are there to just help you. So it's extra stuff to help you. And yeah, to do both school and this is impressive, and it's hard. So yeah, it's all right. Okay, so I'll talk to you guys later. Hopefully we all learned something new and we understood what we built today. Hopefully we're going to be able to build this ourselves. But yeah, good job, and hopefully I'll hear from you guys later. So yeah, I have to go eat now, and yeah, so yeah, bye.